In the interest of promoting health and safety as we continue to deal with COVID-19 pandemic, the Board of Estimates will continue to meet virtually. For members of the public that are following today's meeting, we're picking up last week where we have 4 items on the February 2nd non-routine agenda that we'll hear this morning. For a list of the items to be considered this morning, I direct the board's attention to a memo from my office dated February the 2nd, 2022. The first item on the non-routine agenda for this morning can be found on page 41, Department of Finance Master Services Agreement. This is a request in the amount of $96,760 to enter into a master services agreement with the Paymentus Corporation to provide a full-featured electronic billing and payment solution. A protest was received from Kotuk Rock LLP who is representing ACI Payments Incorporated. On behalf of the Finance Department, we have on today's call Director Henry Raymond to walk us through this request. Mr. Raymond, the floor is yours.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. President Mosby, Mayor Scott, Controller Henry, and honorable members of the board, I'm Henry Raymond, Director of Finance. This protest is based on the premise that procurement rules were violated since there was no formal solicitation for the master services agreement, as stated on page 2, paragraph 2 of the protesters' correspondence. This premise is incorrect. This service was properly approved as a professional services agreement. Per the city charter, professional services are not required to be formally solicited. This is contained in the charter at Article 6, Section 11, subsection C. The protesters' correspondence notes this exclusion on page 4, paragraph 2 of their protest letter. Now, I'd like to give a little background. For purposes of transparency, a request for information was prepared and posted on the city's procurement website. All vendors registered in CityBuy were afforded the opportunity to review the RFI and respond if so inclined. The purpose of this RFI was to gather market information and was not a solicitation. There were 13 respondents, and their submissions were reviewed by an evaluation team. Of those 13 respondents, 3 finalists were invited to prepare demos and proposals. The proposal that was most advantageous to the city was selected for implementation. So, the key to this protest is that per the city charter, there's no requirement for professional service agreements to be formally solicited. And again, even though there's no requirement, we went the extra steps that were not required because of transparency, posting on the city's website, the procurement website, encouraging vendors to submit and respond to the RFI, which we did. And today I request that the protest be denied and that the award be made to the recommended vendor. Thank you. And I'll answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Director Raymond. I know that you said that an evaluation team was actually established to review the RFI submittals. Did that result in the evaluation team grading, and ultimately the top 3 moved on, and that's where additional information was requested per your conversation? Is that what took place?
That is correct, sir.
Gotcha. So then after the evaluation team, do you know the ranking of the 3 respondents that moved on?
No,
We haven't seen the technical scores yet.
no.
Can the administration provide the technical scores? I think Aaron reached out yesterday. If we could get the breakdown of those technical scores associated with the bids.
We can provide that.
Okay. Are there any additional questions from any members of the board for the Department of Finance? Hearing and seeing none, we're going to move on to the protester. So representative from Patuk Rock, I know I'm butchering that name. Ms. Blunt, is that, can you say the correct pronunciation?
Sure, it's QTAC Rock.
QTAC Rock, okay. So
Yes.
Ms. Blunt, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you. Good morning, honorable members of the board. My name is Jennifer Blunt, and I'm with the law firm QTAC Rock. I am here today as ACI Payments current electronic payments provider on behalf of its protest that was previously mentioned. Also with me today is Steve Surratt, senior counsel at my firm and ACI's lead counsel. Mr. Surratt will make the presentation on ACI's behalf, and I'd like to turn it to him at this point.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, my camera has failed me, but I hope you all can hear me.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Great, very good. And also, it's butchered the spelling of my name at the same time, so I apologize for that.
We have the tendency of doing that around here, so sorry.
Very good. And I also have to agree, I joined the No Hair Club.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for letting us know that since you're not on video.
Right. So as we stated in our protest documents, we did not feel that this process was done properly. And until we just heard now that the city is using the professional services exception as a basis for the award, I want to address that. But first, just in terms of the scenario, what occurred, there was an RFI that apparently was issued back in April. And the RFI was not received by ACI. That was unfortunate. There's a lot of explanation of what happened, but the truth is it wasn't until December that ACI first learned that the RFI had been issued. At that point, the representative for ACI immediately made inquiries, and we had a conversation with the procurement official on January 12th as to what was taking place. And the procurement official assured ACI at that point that based upon the RFI, that no contract award would occur. And of course, this is consistent with what was on the face of the RFI now that we've actually seen it. So at that point, ACI expressed interest in providing the market survey information, which is what an RFI is all about, to allow us at that point to provide information. ACI has been the incumbent since 2014. It has up until September for this current term of its contract to run its course. And then there are two additional 2-year options, which would take us out to 2026. So there's no urgency here to make this switch. And what we would ask that we do at this point is basically take this contract award that's pending, put it under advisement, and let ACI have the opportunity to compete. The fact that there were 13 firms that responded suggests that certainly the city understands the need for full and open competition. Now, as to the professional services exception, I've been doing government contracts for about 50 years. And normally, professional services is limited just to that, professional services. Architects and engineers, lawyers, doctors, people of that type of ilk who are licensed and certified. This is not a professional services contract. This is essentially an online payment contract. And for example, when you deal with federal procurement, and ACI, by the way, is the incumbent contractor supporting the Internal Revenue Service for over 20 years with its online payments. That's not characterized in any way as professional services. At the federal level, just by way of analogy, you would have to be established in a separate procurement vehicle in order to be characterized as professional services. And ACI is not in that category. Now, also, one of the things about professional services is typically, taking architects and engineers as a good example, it's essentially a beauty contest among qualifications without regard to price. And what that means is you can select a consulting engineering firm just on the basis of quals, but it doesn't go into price at all. So here, of course, the question is, what was the basis in which procurement was done? What were the evaluation factors? How was price taken into account? How does the city know it's getting its best value? So we respectfully request that the board at this point put the award to Paymentus in abeyance. Let us have an opportunity to put our qualifications on the table as the incumbent, who's been doing good work, stellar work for the city since 2014. We feel we would be able to fare very well in such a competition. So that's our basis of our protest, is that we essentially were not given a fair opportunity to compete. And the city, of course, having us as the incumbent, I think would benefit from having ACI be a competitor. So at this point, I'd like to just hand it over to Mr. Schwanz from ACI and just have him say a few words about the company.
Thank you, Steve. Can you guys hear me?
Hear you loud and clear.
Thank you. Thank you, President Mosby, Mayor Scott, Comptroller Henry, and distinguished members of the Board of Estimates. Thank you for the opportunity to attend the meeting today and speak to the board. My name is Chris Schwantz, and I lead ACI's customer success team in our government bill pay business. With the time we have, I'd like to brief the board on the long-term partnership we've enjoyed with the City of Baltimore, why we're a partner worth considering as the city seeks to bring increased structure and efficiency to their electronic payments platform. The City of Baltimore has been a valued ACI client since 2014, and as Steve said, our contract is due to renew this fall with 2 additional option years remaining that allow us to continue serving until 2026. I'd also like to highlight that during our partnership, ACI's record is essentially unblemished. ACI is a leading payments provider for the city, and we processed more than 1.6 million transactions in 2021 alone, with nearly 100% uptime. Our business teams, our service delivery teams, and our project teams have had a great working relationship with Baltimore staff for years with no complaints. Our industry-leading availability score for card processing services during our years of working together is 99.97% available with no security events or data breaches. In fact, we've always operated within our service level agreements, and ACI has never violated our contract or been placed in probationary status. Electronic payments is a crucial service for the city, and should the city decide that it desires to conduct a competition for this work, we would like a fair opportunity to compete. As it relates to our fitness to compete for these services, ACI is a global leader in payments, and we are 100% up to the challenge of meeting any business objective out there in the payments industry, including those identified in the RFI that was issued by BCIT. ACI is a provider of world-class electronic payment software. We are a billion-dollar company with a 40-year history in the payments industry and a heritage of proven reliability, experience, and things our competitors cannot offer.
Mr. Schwantz,
Yes, sir.
we definitely appreciate you providing us the background of your structure and its history with the city. Obviously,
Yep.
the city has selected you and been in partnership for quite some time because the city has felt like you were extremely reputable and competent in the services in which you were provided. I think as it relates to kind of the due diligence of this board, we'd like to really speak on the merits of, I guess, the way that this was awarded and the concerns that ACI or the representatives that are here with ACI have with any lack of transparency or ensuring that we're getting the best and final offer for the citizens of Baltimore. So if you could speak directly to those items as opposed to the background and the corporate structure and information of ACI.
Sure. And Mr. President, I was simply trying to highlight the relationship that we had and our fitness to continue working with you.
No, and I get it, and that's why I allowed you to kind of go on.
Yeah.
And if you probably
Thank
could
you
go
for
on even
that.
more. ACI is, I think what's said earlier is a committed partner with our federal government, handles, a tremendous amount of different transactions. So I think the reputation and competency is well known throughout this call. But again, I think what's germane for us at the moment is just trying to understand this process, any irregularities associated with this process, and ensuring that we get to the best um, final offer for the citizens of Baltimore.
Yeah. What, totally understand. I guess, with the fact that ACI did not have an opportunity to review the RFI until just a couple of weeks ago, um, that's the basis for our request to put the payment as contract in abeyance. While we are fully ready to submit our response to the RFI today, and we would like an opportunity to be considered.
Now, could you guys walk us through, I don't know if this is a question for ACI or a question for the administration, but why wouldn't the incumbent vendor be notified about the RFI, or why didn't you get notified? Do you understand the breakdown there, Mr. Schwartz or someone from ACI? If you can't answer, maybe someone from the administration.
This is Mr. Surratt. I can shed some light on that. Uh, But first, I just quickly went to the website, the mayor's website. And the question is, what's the definition of professional services? And it comes up as legal, accounting, architectural engineering, or healthcare services. Uh, Now, as to what occurred, uh, ACI has gone through some corporate restructurings over the last several years. And it turns out on investigation that the RFI went to a bad address in Chantilly, Virginia.
Okay.
Uh, we finally tracked that down and straightened it all out. We got the information updated on the city's information technology website. So now it's all set up and we are in a position to receive correspondence immediately. So that was,
I mean, I think that's an important point. So, at no fault of the city, did you not receive the request for information? Unfortunately, which was on this, which was registered with the city, was a address that didn't meet your needs to be responsive to the RFI, right?
correct, but at the same time, the incumbent, we're in regular contact with the customer. And
Understood.
right,
Yeah, I understood. I just think that that's a really important point. Like the city, in good faith, reached out to you. Unfortunately, it just wasn't an address that was responsive at the time. So I'm just trying to understand each point. I think now moving forward, just trying to understand the process and any irregularities associated with this process. The one question I have, this is kind of teetering back between the administration as well as you guys, is when we talk about this professional, the legal definition of professional services. I guess the administration, Mr. Raymond or someone from the law department, you're confident to assume that a contract of this size, this magnitude, this scale, is considered professional services at its core as it relates to the legal definition in city charter.
This is Henry Raymond, and the answer to that is yes. Further, to officially approve the designation as a professional services agreement requires approval from both the Comptroller's Office as well as the Department of Finance. So as the Director of Finance, I have that responsibility, and the Comptroller's designee also has the responsibility to independently review the request for professional services and determine whether it meets the requirement or not. In this particular instance, we both separately made the determination that this met the definition of a professional services agreement.
Thank you, Director Raymond. I guess since we interjected the comptroller, I would like to hear from the comptroller another member of the board, Comptroller Henry, it's your understanding that this falls under the idea of what professional services is as well?
Well, while I will say that probably the city solicitor is in a better position to give a legal definition
I'm
of a
not asking
professional
for that.
service.
I'm not asking for that. I was just asking for yeah, Mr. Comptroller, I was just asking for that your office reviewed and that you signed off that this is actual professional services. I was just trying to validate what the Director of
Mr.
Finance
Raymond,
is
yes.
communicating. Correct.
Yeah, we take the view that a professional services agreement is a consulting agreement and is broader than just the specific law, architecture, and engineering. And so we signed off on this as a professional services agreement. I did, Mr. President, when you're done with this line of questioning, I do have a line of questioning about how the notice was sent to ACI.
Okay, we'll jump back to you. I think the city solicitor would like to weigh in on the legal definition discussion.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me and I haven't committed it to memory, but I believe the procurement section that council cited had engineers, lawyers, doctors as examples,
Yeah.
but that there is a broader provision that accompanies that.
Yes, it does list those as examples.
This is Henry, I'm sorry, this is Henry Raymond. What was approved by the Board of Estimates July 17, 2019 lists approximately 15 different categories of definition for a professional service agreement. So just so that everyone is clear, it's much broader than just the 3 or 4 categories that were previously mentioned, doctors,
Gotcha.
lawyers, etc. It's actually a list of about 15 categories.
Gotcha. The list that he mentioned was directly out of the city charter. I'm sorry, is Ms. Hannah Rose?
Yes, Hannah Rose Kondrasik from the law department here. I just wanted to shed a little bit more light on it. So in March, thank you. In March of 2019, the Board of Estimates approved a resolution specifically relating to non-architectural or engineering professional services and what that process is for determining whether the services the city is requesting meets within the definition of a professional service. It provides a brief definition of professional services, and then it provides a process by which a service can be deemed a professional service. And within that, it speaks to the approval or concurrence of the Director of Finance and the designee from the Comptroller's office. So that process was met here. What Director Raymond is also referring to is a de facto list of professional services, which was approved by the board in July 17th of 2019, which for that list of professional services, you do not need to go through the process of getting special approval for it to meet the definition of a professional service. So those that de facto list is the roughly 15. It does include doctors, nurses, CPAs, but it's much more detailed than that with additional services. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. And out of that list of 15, where does this fall under?
So it, according to the approval from the Comptroller's office, it met within the definition of the information technology consultant providing strategic direction, insight, and/or recommendations related to the city's information technology assets and infrastructure. However, because the city wanted to do further due diligence, they went through the extra process of getting it approved, the specific services herein approved as a professional service, rather than going the route of just identifying it as a de facto professional service and proceeding with negotiating the contract.
Gotcha.
So it separately got approved under the resolution, not based on the list of de facto professional services.
Understood. So I think I'm starting to see 2 issues. I'm starting to see an issue of the legal definition associated with what professional services is, and potentially ambiguity, the way it kind of spells out in the charter. And then I guess more specifics of what the board decided to act on in 2019, with the 15 different categories associated with what professional services look like, and trying to identify how this one fits in one of those 15. I think that that's one of the issues. The secondary issue is, I believe the entire thought process behind that is to generate consultation, to generate an agreement with a subject matter expert, a professional service provider, to help consult with the city on something. Now, in this particular bid, could it be argued that this is also flowing into implementation and past consultation? I guess Mr. Raymond or someone from procurement, can you speak on behalf of that? If we're able to move past the consultation and say that this is a professional services, can we now speak on behalf of, is this just consultation or is it more than consultation?
This is Henry Raymond. This is more than consultation. It is implementation, and this is allowable as a professional services agreement.
So I think that, to me, in hearing all the discussion today, to me, just listening in, that is really the crux of the matter. It appears to me that the intention of professional services is to get consultation from subject matter expertise, but not to necessarily turn into a contract that is specific to implementation. The one last question before we go to comptroller that I'll ask the administration. In the past, was this set up as an RFI? I mean, when ACI originally won this, or when we've put this out for bid before, was it set up as an RFI, or was it actually set up as an RFP? So again, we could get best and final offer in a competitive, comparative type of environment with responsive vendors. So was it set up as an RFP when this was put out before?
Yes, it was, and that is because professional service agreements were not approved until 2019. So when this was originally approved in 2014, there was no concept of professional services agreement.
So, okay, I know about the 2019 decision on this board, and that's where we augmented the list of those 15 subcategories that we mentioned. But the term professional services has been in city charter prior to 2019. Is that accurate?
I'm not sure.
Just to add, yes, professional services have been there. There had not been this resolution yet until 2019, which provided that additional level of detail for qualifying a service as a professional service. But there were definitely professional services entered into prior to 2019.
Understood. So that was my question. So in the past, when the board didn't take action on augmenting the list to these 15 subcategories, professional service was still a legal term in city charter. And I assume at the time, prior to 2019, the city felt as if this was not professional services. So we went with a full class, very transparent, very open, very competitive process through an RFP. With that, I'll go to the city comptroller. I believe there's some, I'm sorry, before we go to you, comptroller, I think city solicitor might want to provide some insight on what I'm saying.
My recollection is that this was sole sourced.
It was sole source before. That's even worse. All right. Okay. Thanks for making it worse.
In 2014, it was sole sourced.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, city solicitor. We'll go to comptroller Henry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Although I would invite you to look at it from the perspective of, if it was sole sourced in 2014 and it was put out for RFI this time, technically that's better. Like we moved to a more open and transparent process this time, a more competitive one than we did it in 2014. But the question I had, I wanted to make sure I understood the issue of giving notice, because Director Raymond explained that the RFI was sent to all vendors in city buy, and ACI says they did not receive it, and they eventually identified that it had gone to a bad address because of some internal restructuring. And what I'm curious about is if ACI is the incumbent, and we are receiving payment from them or receiving their processing money for us, and we are paying them now, I'm a little confused as to how the address that the city had for them was not an effective one. And I'm not sure where that question should, I guess it should start with the city and then maybe ACI should respond. So, Director.
I think Director Raymond would like to answer. So Director Raymond.
Yes.
if you could please answer.
So let me clarify. What I indicated in my remarks was that we placed the RFI on the city's website in CityBuy. All vendors registered in CityBuy were afforded the opportunity to review and, if so inclined, respond to the RFI. All city vendors are registered in CityBuy. ACI was registered in CityBuy, but put in a bad address or it was an out-of-date address. We did not specifically send anything to any particular vendors. We put the RFI on the city's procurement website, and vendors were allowed to review and respond based on it being on the city's website.
Did anyone from ACI want to contest that in any way, shape, or form?
Mr. Comptroller, please allow me to call on folks to ask questions.
Well, Mr. President, then the only thing I would ask is, does ACI have any response to that?
Got it. We put it out there. So ACI, you want to respond to that? I think we kind of already beat that horse dead. You know, they didn't have the right address registered, whether the city sent them something or not. I don't know if they were wronged in the process. The only thing I can think of is, since they were the incumbent, I'm not sure if we probably had most of the information on the RFI that we were requesting in the RFI. So I don't know if really responding to the RFI. I think, again, the real crux of the matter is, because we did it as an RFI, did we really allow for, you know, best and final offers in a competitive sort of process for something that's really important, not just as it relates to the terms of this agreement associated with the contract, but what it means to our constituents. And we should always be trying to drive to provide them with the best services, particularly with something as important as this billing system. So again, ACI, based off of, I guess, the understanding and concerns and questions of the comptroller, do you want to talk about not receiving the bid again, or the process?
This is Mr. Surratt, and I can bring in Mr. Swans as appropriate. As the incumbent, we are in regular contact with the customer. And of course, it's somewhat siloed in terms of correspondence back and forth. We don't deal with the procurement people. And apparently it came as somewhat of a surprise to everybody that ACI had not been aware that the RFI existed. So once we got wind of this, we immediately got a hold of the procurement people and tried to find out what was going on. And the procurement people assured us that no, there was not going to be a contract award that would stem from this RFI. No mention was made of professional services at all, which now we understand what was taking place. But apparently this was being done behind the scenes so that the technical people that ACI works with on a regular basis were unaware as well. And certainly the procurement person we talked to apparently was not aware of this. So there was a disconnect, no question about that. So at this point, where we are is that we feel that the process should have been free and open competition, that it should have been a request for proposals, which is a formal solicitation under the city charter. And then at that point, you would allow for a full competition, including price. And professional services, again, I have to remind you, typically does not look at price. It's simply a beauty contest based upon qualifications. And at the federal level, it's called the Brooks Bill. You have a counterpart in Maryland law as well, where that's how architects and engineers and other licensed professionals and consultants are used. That's how they get selected. So here, we really feel it's in the best interest of all, including the city, of course, that you allow for free and open competition. You go through the request for proposals process, which means a proposal is solicited. You then go through the ranking. You form a competitive range. You conduct negotiations, and then you call for best and final offers. And the evaluation factors should include price as one of the factors to be considered. That didn't occur here. We still have plenty of runway on the contract that's in place right now. It doesn't expire until September, so there's no rush. And we just ask that everything be set back and we go through a process that's fair to everybody, including the taxpayers.
Thank you. So we've already kind of discussed that. I think that there was an evaluation team that was established and it was a competitive and comparative process. I think I've asked from the administration for information regarding what the result of that process was, the actual grading of it. I think at the core and the crux of this is this a regular or was this an irregular award process? And did this limit the city's ability of getting the best in class bid, not just from a pricing perspective, but also, delivering of services. So the responsible, responsive, best price. So with that, I'm going to ask that we defer this. So, I would like my team and myself to kind of get that information and look over that information. At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns for members of the board, for the administration, or for the actual protester? I do see the hand of Miss Hannah Rose from the Law Department. Ms. Rose?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add one thing. This is a professional service. It's been properly designated as a professional service under the resolution approved by the board in 2019. If you look at the charter, this charter clearly states that professional services are excluded from the formal solicitation process, best responsive, responsible, low bid. And there is a different process for architects and engineers. This is non-architect and engineer professional related services. There is no obligation for the city to do a formal low bid, responsive, responsible, competitive solicitation. So just wanted to put that on the record.
Yes, and we've heard that loud and clear from the administration, and we appreciate you doubling down on that. The one question I think that was still open-ended is, out of the 15 categories, which one does this fall under?
So the de facto list of categories does not is not an exhaustive list. Those are for the ones that don't require separate approval from the director of finance and the designee from the comptroller's office. For all other services that an agency director feels meet the definition or parameters of a professional service outside of the de facto services, that's where you would go and make the specific request, which was done here. So
Understood.
the fact that there are de facto, this does not need to fit within any of those categories because it was separately approved as
Gotcha.
a professional service.
And that's what Director Raymond went over, saying that he approved as well as Comptroller Henry approved this
Correct.
as professional services. Understood. Okay. Are there any other questions, concerns, comments regarding this issue?
Well, this is Mr. Surratt. We just want to, again, we're not saying that this has to be the lowest responsible bidder. That's an invitation for bid.
Yeah, no, those were my words. I wasn't putting those words in your mouth.
Right. No, I agree with that. We're asking that if you feel that it's important to do a competitive procurement, and we have no quarrel with that, then it has to go through the request for proposals process.
Understood.
And the other is the fact that we did or did not receive notice is really beside the point.
That was my point earlier. That's why I wanted to eliminate that wanted to move that off the table.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Finance Director, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. my comments are as follows. We followed the procurement guidelines for this award. It was fair, it was open, it was transparent. It is not the city's fault that ACI had an incorrect address and did not receive the information.
Yeah.
Our process was open, it was objective, it was impartial, there was competition, and we should move forward with the recommendation for the vendor. What we're trying to do here is move to a new online payment platform that offers more ways to pay, more places to pay, and offers a lower convenience fee to the users. So this will save consumers money, and it is not the city's fault that ACI was not able to respond because they had outdated information in city buy.
Yeah, Director Raymond, I think that we've kind of pushed that issue out. I think we beat that dead horse. I tried to do that at the start of this, when I went through the process that the city in good faith reached out to ACI, or thought that they reached out to ACI, and it didn't happen, right? So I think, again, we're at like, one, does this really meet professional services? I think law department has doubled down and tripled down on that, and they told us it has. But more importantly, I think to a point that you mentioned, when we talk about the service fees, when we talk about how important this is this really just consultation? It appears to me that it's not. It's much more than consultation. It appears that it was an RFI that really turned into like generating a contract that is really important to the citizens of Baltimore. And the fact that maybe with this new vendor, we're lowering the fees that ACI is, to me, to really leans towards this idea of that's why we should create a competitive environment so we can get, again, the best and final offer from whomever is out there to kind of bid on that. So, at this point, I think we're going to defer to next week. Definitely want to see information that came out of the evaluation committee that identified those three vendors, and then ultimately how we selected this vendor as the best-in-class vendor. With that, we're going to move on unless there's any tremendous amount of unreadiness or some really important issue that either the administration or the protester would like to mention. I do see in the hand of Comptroller Henry. I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. The one question I have, and I think this is for the finance department, is other than the general statements that you've made here at the meeting, have any specifics of the recommended awardees proposal been publicly released?
No.
Okay.
Nothing other than what has been discussed here.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
This meeting.
All right, thank you. So with that, we're going to move on. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be, thank you to the folks that joined us from Kentucky and ACI, anyone else that tuned in. We're going to actually defer this. We're not going to vote on this today. We're going to defer it to next week so we can get additional information from the administration. You're happy to log off. Thank you for participating. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 42, Department of Law Settlement Agreement and Release. This is settlement amount of $40,000 to Mr. Donald Stockton. The underlying lawsuit alleges that the Sheriff Department vehicle rear-ended Mr. Stockton's truck, severely damaging the vehicle and causing injuries to Mr. Stockton. On behalf of the Law Department, we have Deputy Solicitor Steve Salisbury. I didn't know if Ms. Thompson.
Yeah, sorry.
We have Steve Salisbury on today. So the floor is yours, Mr. Salisbury.
Thank you, Mr. Council President and members of the board. I'm Stephen Salisbury with the Law Department. The Law Department is requesting approval and authorization of a settlement agreement in the amount of $40,000 for a claim arising out of a motor vehicle accident. The accident took place on March 16th, 2017. A deputy in the Sheriff's Department was driving on the southbound lane of the Hanover Street Bridge and rear-ended a plaintiff's vehicle was incapacitated in the right-hand lane. The deputy's vehicle rear-ended the plaintiff's vehicle as after the deputy had briefly looked down just for a moment prior to rear-ending the vehicle, and he presented that statement at the time of the accident. Because the deputy in the sheriff's department had acknowledged that he had looked down prior to the accident and been unable to look up in time to avoid the accident, there's really no question of negligence here. There was $11,000 in medical expenses, and there's an anticipated future medical expenses, and that has led to the requested settlement amount of $40,000. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chief of Staff. Members of the board, are there any questions or concerns for the law department? Hearing and seeing none at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
Just really, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask this earlier when checking with the law department. Did the sheriff's office ever share information about whether the employee was disciplined?
We don't have any information from the sheriff's office about that. That would be something that only the sheriff's office would have to answer. We don't have any information from that to that end.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you, Ms. Comptroller, and thank you, Ms. Stockton. Ms. Salisbury, at this point, are there any additional questions or concerns or any unreadiness? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and probably seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is now approved. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 158, Department of Audits, Audit Report. The board is requested to note receipt of Baltimore City Department of Public Works Biennial Performance Audit for fiscal years ending June 30th, 2020 and 2019. At this time, I'll turn the floor over to our amazing auditor, Mr. Josh Pash, to introduce his team and walk us through the audit findings. Mr. Auditor, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, and members of the Board of Estimates. My name is Josh Pash. I am the City Auditor, and I am here to present the biannual performance audit of the Department of Public Works. The agenda is to present the objective and scope of the audit methodology, the risks and divisions that we selected for review, the summary of findings, and I will refer to the confidential management letter and then the follow-up on the prior findings. So our objective, our scope methodology. So the objective was to assess whether the Department of Public Works policies and procedures adequately address the water billing process. The next slide will summarize where we began and ended the process to review that, and then to follow up on the prior findings and recommendations. And the scope we were looking at was fiscal years 2020 and 2019. So our audit methodology, we interviewed individuals from DPW and BSIC to obtain an understanding of the processes and procedures and the systems. And then we reviewed policies and procedures, and we evaluated relevant objectives, risks, and controls to confirm whether the DPW has policies, procedures, and processes to reduce or mitigate the identified risks. We looked at the risks starting from the process of having the approved rates, water rates from the Board of Estimates and getting those into the system onto the billing. So the risks we identified, potential risks, were approved rates are not accurately established in the system. Not all customers are added to the DPW water billing system. Water usage is not accurately captured. Not all customers are billed, and the customers do not pay. And then the related functions that we reviewed are setting the DOE approved rates in the DPW billing system. So starting after the Board of Estimates approves the rates and sends them to DPW, setting up new accounts for customers, reading meters, billing, addressing customer complaints specifically related to billing, and then the collections. Our findings, for for the information technology section, we did note that DPW does have a segregated process to enter rates into the water billing system and to test those rates. But they do not formally have policies and procedures of that process. So there's no policy that requires those steps. And in discussing with DPW, the question we proposed was, if they keep people who, do this process entering it, were to call out sick or retire, is how would that knowledge transfer happen? And they admitted that that would not be a smooth transition. For the DPW meter shop, I'll address the recommendations later on in the presentation. For the DPW meter shop, we noted that there's they don't have a formally documented process for their automated and systematic water meter
Does that conclude your presentation, Mr. Auditor?
I'm sorry, no, I saw you waving. I didn't know if I was on mute or something.
Oh, no, it's sorry. That's me probably just rubbing my head or talking to somebody in my office.
Okay, I was gonna feel pretty bad if I'd been talking for.
No, I'm sorry. I'm probably sorry.
Okay, no problem. I'll jump back.
Part of the bloopers film of Board of Estimates.
Okay, okay, going back to the meter shop. So they do have an automated process, a systematic process to read the meters. And what we noticed is that there's not any industry standards that they follow to look at replacing water meters, calibrating water meters, etc. And the current procedure is that water meters are replaced once they are no longer working. For the customer service support division, and this is regarding customer complaints specifically related to the billing process. There are policies and procedures. However, there have been recent changes in that management now has a procedure to review daily exceptions on a proactive basis for city and county water accounts. And they do have processes and procedures to verify that all accounts are billed. However, these have not been formally documented, and to ensure consistency and consistency. Regarding customer complaints, we noted that the customer complaints, when they come in, there is one a service level agreement. So an SLA is basically a benchmark for a customer service department to address and resolve a customer service ticket or complaint. And then basically the DPW has one SLA of 5 days for no matter what the complaint is. And so we noted that there's not a process to differentiate depending on the type of complaint. And there's not a process to update these based on current conditions. So we did notice that since there's only one SLA, it's difficult to know if they're doing a good job meeting the customer service complaints. And so the idea here is, if it's a complaint that takes a couple hours, they need to change an address or updates information. That's measured against the 5-day benchmark. And if it's, there's a leaking pipe, and that's going to take maybe a week or two to kind of, get the crew out, get the parts, that's also measured against the 5-day benchmark. So it's difficult to determine how effective the customer complaint resolution is, since there's only that one benchmark. Looking at the fiscal for the city and the DPW, we noted that the city does not take proactive measures to increase water revenue collections. And so what we mean by this is that DPW does generate a monthly aging accounts receivable report to determine which billings have not been paid 30, 60, 90 days or more for the city accounts. And they show which ones are outstanding, but there's no process to take this report and act on it. So there's nothing done to collect on delinquent accounts for city and county accounts. And we also noted that when accounts are deemed uncollectible, that's not done at the individual account level, that's done at the macro city level on the annual financial reporting. And so basically analysis is done every year to determine which bills have not been paid for a set amount of time and the likeliness to collect them, and then that amount is written off. And so basically what this leads to is that individual customer accounts that are not being paid and that have been deemed by the city to be uncollectible are just accumulating over time. And so each year when we do the annual financial report and we write off what we consider bad debts or uncollectible accounts in the water, we're writing off what was written off the previous year and what's this year. And to put this in perspective, for fiscal year 20, $212 million was collected. And for 2019, $177 million was collected. We did ask the question of how much was billed in those years, and DPW told us it would take 4 to 6 weeks to accumulate that information, which was outside of our time frame for the audit. Summary of recommendations. Okay, for the IT division, basically to document, formalize the policies and procedures that set down and make sure that we have succession, prepare for succession planning of putting the rates in the system, testing it, which they are doing, but has not been documented and not, no way to determine if it's being handled consistently. For the meter shop, we recommend that there's formal policies and procedures for water meter reading processes. So again, they're doing that, but there's 2 different processes, one process for the county and one for the city, because they're not on the same system, to formalize those. And then to assess the value of proactive water meter calibration and replacement, maybe taking on an industry standard. Again, this is something that the department needs to make a cost benefit analysis of. So we don't know if it would be, more cost effective to do the process the way they're doing now, or to, have some kind of proactive schedule where they're, calibrating and replacing. And then to basically document and to establish, those processes and controls for the calibration and replacement, so that when they are being evaluated, that there is a benchmark and then a methodology to it. For the customer service section, so to formalize policies and procedures that of the daily reviews, which they are doing and they implemented recently but haven't been codified, and to implement formal policies and procedures for tracking, monitoring, and periodic evaluation of benchmarks of SLA. We highly recommend setting SLAs based on type of service. How they divvy that up is, based on the expertise of the agency, but having the one benchmark we feel is not giving the agency or the city a good way to evaluate the effectiveness of that process. And then to document basically how they're monitoring those processes, so that there's an ability to do a historic review and to see if, the processes and the SLAs and the customer response systems are improving over time or not. And then those SLAs should be set and then should be included that when they're doing the reporting. Regarding the city and the DPW fiscal, the way that the Department of Audits addressed this was to give transparency to the city leadership and to the to fiscal, and let that transparency address how changes are made. So our recommendation is that DPW quantify the amounts, the number of customers, maybe the type of customers, and how many months that water bills have not been paid or paid late, and that these statistics should be presented to Baltimore City Fiscal and Baltimore City leadership. And then at that point, that group can decide whether we want to change or implement new ways to maximize revenue collection and to collect revenue effectively. The Department of Audits believes that by not writing off customer accounts that have been marked as uncollectible in previous years, that the data set is now becoming loaded and makes it more challenging to analyze how to address those issues. I do want to note that we did have a confidential management letter because the findings related to security related recommendations, government auditing standards permits and recommends that these communications are made to agency management, appropriate security personnel, and city leadership only, just because of the confidential and security related nature of that. And that is a separate report that has been or will be submitted to those parties. We looked at the implementation. We did look at the implementation status in this report. The one prior finding was related to migrating to a new IT system, and the finding was that the historical data was inaccessible, and that the department should implement policies and procedures that when migrating to a new system, that there is a plan put in place to make sure the historical data is accessible and readable. And there was no new IT migrations for us to actually test. So we deferred that. Okay, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Auditor, for your thorough presentation. One quick question I have. It appeared that there was like a close to a 20% increase of revenue that was collected between 2019 and 2020. Did you guys find out the reason why such a sharp increase in the expectation moving forward?
We did not specifically look into that, no.
You don't know? That'd be interesting to kind of understand and know why there was some efficiency gain, maybe from a past audit, or maybe some implementation factors or some environmental factors that caused it. I don't know, Mr. Director Mitchell, if you could get somebody to look into that, but definitely interested in seeing the reason behind the sharp increase of revenue collected.
The fiscal 2019 would also be right with the ransomware attack also.
Oh, so maybe we lost money during that process?
Or just didn't collect it. This is the amount that we actually collected. So I know with the pandemic that there was the city was lax about collecting, and I believe that there was certain programs put into place related to people who couldn't pay. The governor had put out any kind of fees and those types of things should be the due date should be deferred. So that is likely one of the causes there. And it's completely possible. Like I said, we didn't dive into the specific accounts of the billing because That wasn't number one part of our audit, and number two, the details of that was not so easy to get. But it's possible that the 212 million in 20 is also collecting stuff that was billed in 2019.
Understood. Makes sense. Thank you. If Director Mitchell, not that you need to answer now, but if you have any background on that, just kind of let us know. I appreciate it. At this point, are there any other additional questions or concerns from members of the board? Ms. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. First, I wanted to thank City Auditor Pass and his team for this long-awaited report. They put in many hours, including nights and weekends, to get this information to the board, and I just wanted to tell Josh publicly we appreciate his team's efforts. As we've heard, this audit uncovered major areas of risk, financial risk, customer service risk, and process risk, several of which are deeper than just not having adequate policies and procedures. Simply put, we need accurate information from DPW in order to eliminate mistakes in the billing process, to collect revenue on time, and to target egregiously delinquent accounts. We cannot properly run our city if there isn't a clear understanding of who oversees collecting which revenue and how it's done. As the mayor made it clear in yesterday's Water for All announcement, we're trying not to charge our lower income residents more than they can afford, but it's equally important that we actually collect what we're due from those who can afford it. I also want to thank DPW for their cooperation with this audit. I appreciate Director Mitchell's commitment to improving the water billing system, and I look forward to improvements in the future. As the city's fiscal watchdog, it's my responsibility through the Department of Audits to let the people know when DPW makes the needed changes that they say they will, as they continue on a path to steady improvement. And so that's why today's audit is just the first step on that path. I have directed the city auditor to conduct a follow-up analysis of DPW's effectiveness in two other key areas: measuring and resolving customer account exceptions, and implementing proactive strategies to increase collections of delinquent accounts. I'm also requesting that DPW report back to the Board of Estimates periodically on their progress in addressing the findings in today's report. Mr. President, the people of Baltimore deserve the best possible service from DPW, and I know that the folks in DPW will continue to work hard to provide that service. But I want them both to know that the Department of Audits will also continue to offer any help that DPW needs to get it right. Thank you, Mr. President.
No, thank you, Mr. Comptroller, for laying that out for us. Truly, truly appreciate your leadership. At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board or the audit team? Hearing and seeing none, we'll just note the report as, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. President, I'm sure that DPW wants to comment on the report. I saw the director and the deputy director.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I must have missed your hand, Director Mitchell. I apologize.
No, thank you so much, Mr. Mayor and Mr. President. I think Deputy Director Garber is on and may be able to provide a few.
Okay, Deputy Director Garbark, I'm so sorry if I missed your hand, but at this time, I'll give DPW opportunity to speak.
No problem, Mr. President. We do have a quick presentation, if that is possible for me to.
Of course not. Only one presentation per topic. What are you doing?
I understand that. I understand that.
It's all yours.
Thank you, sir.
All right. You should have control to do it now.
Okay. All right. I hope everyone can see this. All right, thank you. Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Controller, honorable members of the Board of Estimates. I'm Matt Garbark, Deputy Director for the Department of Public Works. I first want to thank Auditor Pash and his team. As Controller Henry mentioned, they were very collaborative, they were very helpful and constructive, and truly wanted to work with us to help find solutions and to help uncover areas of risk that we can fix. And were not working at cross purposes or anything, and did seem to be very helpful and very supportive. One thing I do want to mention at this is, as audits are on for prior years, so these are for fiscal years 19 through 21, and we are currently in fiscal year 22. So real quick, the 5 major findings were as follows. The IT division of DPW needs to document new rate setting and testing processes for continuity. Our meter shop needs to develop policies and procedures for continuity. Our customer support and services division processes identify exceptional water usage need to be formally documented. DPW customer support and service division needs to improve policies, procedures, practices for tracking and monitoring. And then the city does not take proactive measures to increase water revenue collection. So we'll touch on each of these things very briefly. So what I want to open up and really describe is an initiative that has been quietly going on for the last 6 months or so. Mayor Scott made it abundantly clear that one of his highest priorities is straightening out the metering and billing issues. Director Mitchell has made that his top priority. And what we have done is we have convened what we're calling a turnaround project or turnaround initiative. In looking at some other areas around the country and the world that have had these issues, there are 4 basic legs to this stool of these types of projects. First is looking at the billing, the actual billing process, the systems, the methodology. Then looking, the second leg is metering. These are the cash registers that actually record and register what is being metered and what is being used. Then there's the customer service and experience portion. And then finally, revenue management. A utility that goes in that has too much debt is a utility that is highly at risk. So looking at the first area, billing, we established a very clear goal that every customer receives an accurate monthly bill. It's as simple as that. We know that that doesn't always occur, but that is our ultimate goal. And what we have done to get to that goal is, as Auditor Pash mentioned, we have developed an exceptions review and clearing process. These are processes where accounts that have either extremely low or extremely high usage and billing are flagged by our system. We review them every single day. We review them as a team. I review them myself. We then bring some of the higher and riskier and more egregious issues to the director directly. And we make sure that these exceptions are cleared before it gets into a cycle where month after month and ultimately year after year, problems continue to exist. We also quickly review and consider adjustments. Adjustments are any time where the consumption is billed properly, but for whatever reason, there was a leak, there was something else that happened. We are reducing the bill to accommodate the issues that happened during that period so that we can help our customers. We review them every week. I review them directly. Again, we bring reports to Director Mitchell. We have reports that are reported out every week and every day, and these are considered very quickly and very appropriately. We're also looking to link our systems. We have a billing system called UMAX. We also have a work order system called CityWorks. They're not linked, but we're working to, in fact, link them so that when a case is entered into UMAX, it automatically creates a work order for the meter shop or some other entity to investigate. We are working on proactive communications. We've established a leak report where the system can actually flag potential leaks. We are using that to reach out proactively to customers to tell them that they might have a leak. Finally, we're looking at training. There are trainings for the UMAX billing system. There's trainings for how to use and how to do adjustments, and we're looking to do all of that. And overlaid over all of this is a documentation of all of these in official policies, procedures, and SOPs. So all of this will be documented so it can be replicated over time. We believe that these efforts in this area will go to address findings 1 and finding 3, because we are going to set the SOPs for adding to our rate process, our rate setting. Second area is metering. The goal was every meter should be reporting a read every month. Simple as that. One of the first things we did is we tracked our no reads. This is where accounts are not sending a signal or we can't get a signal for whatever reason. We also then looked at the commercial accounts first. Those are the higher areas of concern. They tend to be more complicated. They also tend to be where the largest risk is for revenue issues if it's not collected. We've updated the technology at our meter shop. We are deploying, rather than mobile handheld devices, they were actually physical devices that would plug in. We're using tablets that are basically handheld computers that can connect to the meters and actually interact and interface with our systems a lot better. We have ramped up our contracting efforts where for our larger contracts, the meters have to be addressed by these contractors. They are larger vaults and they need construction. Finally, we are also developing training. We're setting up a training room at the meter shop. We're developing on-site, hands-on training so that we can actually have a robust and effective and truly state-of-the-art meter shop. We do believe that this does address finding 2. Again, all of this will be documented in policies and procedures. Third area is our customer experience. And the goal there is that every single customer should receive timely service and response in a courteous and friendly manner. This is seemingly easy, but obviously there's a lot of nuances in here. One of the key things to this area is training. And a lot of people intend and mean well, but understanding how to address some of these complicated issues, how to explain these issues in a way that makes sense, and how to be patient when customers may not understand or may be frustrated or, quite frankly, may have all sorts of other issues that end up coming out when they're talking to some of our representatives. So there's a training module, 3 modules, progressive modules that the Association of Public Works Administrations puts out, APWA, that we are using to actually train our customer service staff. We're developing written scripts that they use. We're also working, we have here MTE, I believe it's the Department of Telecommunications, to ensure that our MyTel phone systems are reporting as much as they can report. And because of the new voice over IP systems, we are able to get terrific reports on phone usage and also on call center monitoring. We're tracking length of calls, call times, call volumes, hold times, all sorts of metrics on that to develop those methodologies and to try and find, as Auditor Pash mentioned, a better service level agreement and a better way to actually measure our responsiveness. One thing we are working with Department of Telecommunications on, which we're very excited about, is actually putting a survey, a phone survey that you get at the end of the call or as a callback, where the customer actually can begin evaluating the service that they receive. We think that that could really help us in identifying some of these areas. The last area is revenue management, and we believe we can partly address this and partly address it by making it easier to pay. One thing is if we ensure accurate billing in a timely manner, people are more likely to pay. If they think there's a problem with their bill, they're not going to pay. We are deploying something called Promise Pay, where this is going to help people with payment plans to pay and to keep up on their payment plans. We're developing a revenue predictions and analysis unit. We're also working with the state and the federal government to take advantage of the low-income household water assistance program to help pay off some of our delinquent water bills and debt. Yesterday, there was a tremendous announcement on the Water for All program. This is going to be magnificent in helping some of these account holders who have over the years accrued delinquencies no longer have those. So we're no longer going to have some of that debt that accrues. We're also looking to open up and have additional ways to pay through our payment portal and through other things citywide. We do want to mention there is no citywide collections program that exists as of now. That is something DPW feels is a much broader discussion than just DPW, and that it needs to be considered at a citywide level since it's obviously a much larger policy perspective. And finally, just some very quick results of what we've done. When we began this project, we started looking at numbers and we used, going back to last year, the no reads. We have reduced no reads, that is fixing our transmitters, fixing our signals by 50%. So we have gone from about 5,164 no reads back last February. We're down to about 2,500. This is our total work order tracking. So back last April, we had 7,778 work orders. We have now gotten that down. This goes back for some of them goes back years. We have now gotten that down to about 1,100. So a significant reduction in just a few months. There was also mentioned in the OIG report that there were 8,000 work orders and tickets for county issues. We have addressed every single one of them with the exception of 30. So we have made tremendous progress in that area. We've also achieved a sustained increase in revenue over the last 6 months. We're still trying to figure some of that out and see how that trend continues. Obviously, we're getting a lot of accounts back online and meters back online, but we are very, very excited to see that. I will thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
No, it was well worth it. And I think, DPW, Mr. Mayor, I would like to commend Director Mitchell as well as Deputy Director Garbart for really setting a gold standard. The auditor and his team puts a lot of thought and time into ensuring that they provide the best findings for this board. And this is the first time that we've seen an agency really not just accept what those findings are and not just kind of talk about it, but really walk us through the things that they've been able to do, empirical data of how things are improving, and next steps on continuance of that improvement. So, I know that takes a lot of time, and I just want to say thank you, not just for me as the chair of this board and president of city council, but more importantly for the citizens of Baltimore that get to see good government in action in order to come up with issues and findings and an agency actually lay out how they're going to correct those things. So again, thank you for your leadership, Director Mitchell, as well as Deputy Director Garbart for walking us through that. I do think I saw the hand of the mayor. Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your words. I was just want to say thank you to the director and deputy director and everybody for DPW. I have been very tough, I would say, about this issue, even hopping in surprisingly, especially when I was on isolation on some of these meetings to see the progress. But I really want to thank the comptroller and the auditor as well for pushing the department. This is, as you know, as the comptroller knows, the #1 issue that comes into our offices, as has been for quite some time. To see this progress, which is significant progress, not for us, but for the residents of Baltimore and our customers, is a big deal. And I look forward to us continuing to see that progress and working with the auditor's office, your office, Mr. President, and everyone else to see this our water program totally revamped and to be a beacon of how we can go from having such a outdated, inefficient process to having something that everyone can expect and really respect to get the best service from. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, are there any questions or concerns? Any unreadiness for members of the board before we note this report? Hearing and seeing none. Again, thank you, Mr. Auditor, and thank you to Deputy Director as well as Director Mitchell for your report and readout. This audit report will be listed as noted We're going to move on to the last and final item of the non-routine agenda. It can be found on pages 51 through 52. Bureau of Procurement, Police Human Capital Management System. This is a request to approve the renewal of contract number B50003752 for $150,000. The renewal is to continue the software subscription for Baltimore Police Department's workforce management system known as e-Resource. On behalf of the Bureau of Procurement, we have Acting Procurement Chief, Ms. Keisha Brown, to speak to this contract. Chief Brown, the floor is yours. Chief, you are on mute.
Thank you. That was a great speech that I had over here, but I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. President Mosby, Mayor Scott, Comptroller Henry, and other honorable members of the board, just regurgitating what President Mosby described in terms of the Police Human Capital Resource Management. This contract was briefed to the other officials in regards to Baltimore Police Department. It's a software subscription for the police department to manage their workforce and their resources in addition to scheduling. This contract was awarded on July 21st, 2015 for $433,000 with subsequent action. If approved for the final renewal today, the total contract amount would be for $1.1 million, $27,000 and $80,000. And we had no performance issues on this contract, and we respectfully ask for the approval of the final renewal.
Thank you, Madam Chief. At this point, would anybody from the police department like to speak? Mr. Chief of Staff Melicon, would you like to speak on behalf of the police department?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Council President. This is a really important aspect of how we manage our patrol force. It helps us track who's off, who's on training, who's getting their training, making sure the training is updated. It's actually a critical part of making sure that we're maintaining that close and effective supervision side of what the consent decree demands of us. And so it's also helpful in managing our overtime burn. If we are able to anticipate and plan out for people's off days, we can better manage and control overtime spending. So this is a critical tool for us. This is the last renewal for this particular agreement, and we will be undergoing a competitive review process for further services delivered by this, and we're working with procurement on that.
No, thank you. Thank you for making the connection with the consent decree as well. I think that's really important for the constituents. At this point, for members of the board, are there any questions or concerns for procurement or the police department? Hearing and seeing none, at this point, I'll entertain a motion to proceed.
Move approval.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, please say nay. You guys have it. This item is approved. As there is no additional business before the desk, at this time, I'll open it up for any questions, concerns, or comments. I see the hand of Comptroller Henry. Comptroller Henry, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Board of Estimates will open bids on Wednesday, February 16th, 2022. In addition to the addenda that I read at the beginning of this meeting last Wednesday, when announcing the postponement of bids until the 16th, we have received one other addendum. The following bid will also be opened on February 16th, 2022. Department of Transportation TR 11317, Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard at Howard Street Corridor Improvements. Thank you, Mr. President.
No, thank you, Mr. Comptroller. We're going to now proceed to adjournment. The Board of Estimates will reconvene on Wednesday, February the 16th at 9 a.m. Please note there is no bid openings this afternoon. This was a recess from last week. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Baltimore, please stay safe, and we absolutely love you. Goodbye.